Summary: I thought it would be a short, polite visit. Instead, one quiet afternoon opened a door to a truth about my grandson that changed how I saw him and myself forever. Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts or story in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. Now, before I begin, tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to know which cities and towns are joining me for this memory that stayed with me for years. I still remember the sound of his knock, not loud or rushed, just a gentle tap that seemed unsure of itself. It was late afternoon, that in-between hour when the sun leans low and the house fills with long shadows. I had been standing at the kitchen sink, hands in warm water, thinking about nothing in particular. When I opened the door and saw my grandson there, I knew immediately something was different. He was taller than the last time I'd seen him, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes carrying a weight I wasn't used to seeing. He smiled, polite as always, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. I invited him in, and the familiar scent of old books, brewed coffee, and lemon cleaner wrapped around us. This house has held decades of conversations, arguments, laughter, and quiet tears. That day, it was about to hold something new. We sat at the small wooden table near the window, the same table where he once colored pictures as a child while I baked pies. Outside, the maple tree swayed gently, leaves whispering against each other. Inside, the clock ticked loudly, filling the spaces neither of us seemed ready to cross. He talked about ordinary things at first. Work, the drive over, how fast time seemed to be moving. I listened, nodding, noticing how his hands rested flat on the table, fingers spread, as if grounding himself. I felt an urge to reach across and place my hand over his, but I didn't. I waited. Then he stopped mid-sentence, took a breath, looked up at me in a way that caught me off guard. Not as a boy, not even quite as a man, but as someone asking to be seen. "I don't really know how to say this," he said softly. I told him he didn't have to rush, that this house had heard worse stumbles than his, that whatever it was, we had time. What followed wasn't dramatic. No raised voices. No shocking confession. Just honesty. He spoke about pressure, about expectations he carried quietly, about feeling unseen in a world that assumed he was fine because he never complained. As he spoke, I realized how often I had looked at him and seen only what I expected to see, not who he was becoming. I shared things too, carefully, about choices I'd made, regrets I carried, and how strength often looks like silence until it doesn't. The space between us softened. The air felt warmer, heavier with understanding. When he finally stood to leave, the sun had nearly set. He hugged me longer than usual, and in that moment, I understood that this visit wasn't about him needing me to fix anything. It was about both of us allowing ourselves to be known, just a little more than before. After he left, the house felt unusually quiet, like it does after a storm that never quite arrives. I stood by the door for a long moment, listening to his car pull away, then fade down the road. The ticking clock returned to my awareness, steady and patient, as if reminding me that time keeps moving whether we're ready or not. That evening, I couldn't settle. I reheated soup I barely touched and sat in my favorite chair with a blanket folded across my lap, though I wasn't cold. My thoughts kept circling back to his eyes, to the careful way he chose his words, and to the realization that I had missed so many chances to ask deeper questions over the years. Not because I didn't care, but because life has a way of convincing us that there will always be another visit, another holiday, another Sunday afternoon. I slept lightly and woke early the next morning, the sky just beginning to pale. I brewed coffee and carried my mug to the porch. The wood creaked beneath my feet, familiar and comforting. From there, I could see the quiet street, the same one where my children once rode their bikes, where neighbors waved and gossip traveled faster than the mail. I thought about my own younger years, how often I'd swallowed feelings because it seemed easier than explaining them. How I learned to be capable, dependable, and calm, even when I wasn't. It struck me then that my grandson had inherited more from me than I'd ever acknowledged. Not just my eyes or my stubborn streak, but that habit of carrying things quietly. Later that day, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out old photo albums from the hallway closet, the heavy ones with worn edges and plastic sleeves that stuck together. There he was at different ages, a gap-toothed smile, mud on his knees, a graduation cap slightly crooked. Each picture felt like a reminder that people don't change all at once. They unfold, slowly, often without an audience. When the phone rang that afternoon and I saw his name, I felt a small flutter of nervousness. He asked if he could stop by again sometime soon. Just to talk, he said. No apology, no explanation, just honesty. I told him yes, of course, that my door was open, the same as it had always been, even if I hadn't always known how to say it out loud. When he arrived a few days later, the atmosphere was different, easier. He seemed lighter, though still thoughtful. We took a walk this time, slow and unhurried, along the path behind the old park. Leaves crunched under our feet. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. We talked about small things again, but underneath it all was a shared understanding that neither of us had to pretend anymore. As we walked, I realized this wasn't about a single visit or a single conversation. It was about learning to listen with patience, to notice the pauses, the unsaid words. It was about recognizing that even the people we think we know best can surprise us if we're willing to see them clearly. And for the first time in a long while, I felt grateful not just for the years behind me, but for the ones still unfolding, quietly, right in front of me. In the weeks that followed, his visits became a quiet rhythm in my life. Not scheduled, not announced far in advance, just a call or a text asking if I was home. Each time, I noticed something new. The way he paused before speaking, as if testing whether his thoughts were welcome. The way he listened when I talked, really listened, not the distracted kind we all slip into without meaning to. One afternoon, rain pressed softly against the windows, turning the world outside into a blur of gray and silver. We sat across from each other again at the kitchen table, mugs warming our hands. The house felt smaller somehow, but not in a bad way. More intimate, more honest. He spoke about choices he was facing, crossroads that didn't come with clear signs pointing the right way. He wasn't asking me to decide for him. I could tell that. He was asking something quieter, something harder. He wanted to know if it was acceptable to change course, to step away from expectations that no longer fit. I told him about a time in my own life when I'd stayed too long in a situation because it was easier than admitting it wasn't right. I described the cost of that decision, not dramatically, just truthfully. The years it took to forgive myself. The relief that came when I finally did. There was a moment when neither of us spoke. The rain filled the silence, steady and patient. I felt a tenderness then, not fragile, but strong. The kind that comes from shared understanding rather than shared history alone. He looked around the kitchen, at the worn countertops and the small cracks in the tile. "This place feels safe," he said. "Like I can breathe here." I hadn't realized how much that meant to me until he said it. This house, with all its imperfections, had become more than just a place to live. It was a space where honesty could settle without fear of being judged or rushed away. As the afternoon faded, we talked about ordinary things again. Movies he liked. A recipe he wanted to try. The neighbor's new fence. but beneath it all was a growing trust, something quietly taking root. When he left that day, I didn't feel the same heaviness I had after his first visit. Instead, there was a sense of purpose, a reminder that connection doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it arrives softly, through consistency, patience, and the willingness to sit with another person exactly as they are. That night, as I turned off the lights and the house settled around me, I understood that this chapter of my life wasn't about looking back with regret. It was about showing up now, fully, for moments I might once have overlooked. The last visit I want to tell you about happened on a morning so ordinary it almost slipped past me. The sky was clear, the kind of blue that feels earned, and the house was filled with that quiet hum it makes when everything is in its place. He arrived with a paper bag from the local bakery, the kind that leaves a trail of warmth and sweetness in the air. It felt like a small offering, but I knew it meant more than that. We ate at the kitchen table again, sunlight spilling across the wood, highlighting every scratch and mark left by years of living. He looked more at ease than I'd ever seen him. Not carefree, but settled, as if something inside him had found its footing. He told me he'd made a decision. Not a dramatic one, not something that would turn heads, but a choice that felt true to him. He spoke calmly, confidently, and as I listened, I felt a quiet pride rise in my chest. Not because he'd chosen what I might have chosen, but because he'd learned to listen to himself. I realized then how much I had changed too. I was no longer trying to be the keeper of wisdom or the steady pillar who never wavered. I was simply present, willing to listen, willing to admit I didn't have all the answers, and that maybe I never had. Before he left, we stood by the door for a moment, neither of us in a hurry. He thanked me, not with big words, but with sincerity. I told him the truth in return, that knowing him now, really knowing him, had been a gift I didn't expect at this stage of my life. After he drove away, I didn't feel the ache of distance. I felt connected. The kind of connection that doesn't depend on constant presence, but on mutual respect and understanding. As I sit here now, looking back on that quiet season, I understand something I wish I'd known earlier. Relationships don't stay alive on tradition alone. They grow when we allow each other to be seen, even when it surprises us. That visit revealed a side of my grandson I hadn't known, yes. But it also revealed a side of myself I had nearly forgotten. A woman still capable of learning, of opening her heart, of finding meaning in moments that arrive softly and leave lasting change behind. And that, more than anything, is the memory that stayed with me. Don't forget to give us like and subscribe this channel.